Hi, my name is Sasha Kabrick, and the topic I've chosen for the Geography of Hope World Issues Summative is Peacekeeping and Peacemaking. This is a very broad topic with many different factors, but for my summative, I have chosen to focus on the role of the United Nations. The responsibility and purpose of the United Nations is to create and sustain peace throughout the entire world. The mission statement for the United Nations is as follows. The UN is dedicated to assisting the member states and the Secretary General in their efforts to maintain international peace and security. The United Nations works by providing help and assisting countries that cannot defend their people on their own. To understand my topic, we have to be able to distinguish between peacekeeping and peacemaking. Peacekeeping is maintaining peace and working with a nation's government to restore peace without acts of violence and force. Peacemaking, however, uses force to create peace by driving out all opposers of peace in that nation. Now that we have established a solid background on the United Nations and the different forms of peace, I will be discussing the role of the UN in the past. The UN was founded in 1945 after World War II to replace the pre-existing League of Nations. The purpose of the UN was to prevent more wars between nations. The United Nations Security Council was appointed in charge of maintaining peace and security. The Security Council has the power to make decisions for any governing body that it is assisting if it feels that the government is not doing the best job they can to create peace. In the past, the UN was focused mainly on peacekeeping. There were less terrorist organizations and governments were more capable of defending their nations and preventing violent attacks in their country. In the past, the UN was used more as a security blanket to simply maintain peace and order in a nation, and there was no force necessary for the UN's cause. An example of a UN peacekeeping mission in the past is when they helped maintain peace in Congo during the war in the 1960s. The Congo government was able to suppress rebel forces and only used the UN to help prevent rebel attacks on the people of Congo. The UN did not take part in any fighting during this war, and this is how they approached most conflicts in the past. Now I will be exploring the UN's role in the present day. When I talked about present, I am referring to the time period from the year 2005 to 2009. Since 2005, the UN has been taking place in a lot more peacemaking missions than in the past. There are still some peacekeeping missions in that the UN is taking part in, but the number has started to decline and the number of peacemaking missions has began greatly increasing. The reason for this increase in peacemaking missions is because there has been a new form of terrorism seen throughout the world. These terrorist groups strike fear into the people and they take control in countries where the government is not particularly strong. These groups refuse to leave their positions of power and the UN is forced to use peacemaking measures to re-establish peace in the nation. These terrorist groups are eliminated by force and the UN has to physically recreate peace in that country. An example of a UN peacemaking mission is the role that the UN currently has in Rwanda. Rebel forces have taken control of the nation and are murdering innocent civilians, but the government is too weak to do anything about this. The UN has had to use force and is eliminating the rebel groups with weapons and military tactics. I predict that in the future this trend will continue and the UN will be taking place in a lot more peacemaking missions and very little peacekeeping missions. This is because the role of terrorism has changed and there are new terrorist groups being created regularly. The advancement of technology and weaponry has helped to arm these forces of evil and has made them particularly dangerous. These forces cannot be negotiated with peacefully and the UN will continue to have to use force to create peace in the world. Thank you for listening to my presentation and I hope you enjoyed it.